Chapter 3, Surrender to Change. What is the essence of that chapter?
Well, when you're depressed, one of the characteristics is nothing much is changing, right? You're sort of, you're kind of sunk like this. You're feeling, I'm going to be
Yes,
like this forever.
yes.
It's never going to get better. I've been in that state. I
Yeah,
understand it.
it's a lot of doom and gloom.
I'm laughing about it now. Not a bad thing to laugh about it, even when you're in the middle of it, if you can,
Mhm.
but it's not so easy. But the idea is if you're in the state where change is not happening, and the natural state for humans, for all organisms, is to be changing all the time. So what depression is doing is it's getting you fixed, or to quote the title of my book, it's getting you stuck. That's why I call the book Unstuck, because
Mm.
people who are depressed kept coming to me and saying to me, I'm stuck.
Mhm.
How do you get unstuck? Well, the most direct route to getting unstuck, which is not the only route, but the most direct route, is to shake things up that are stuck. So one of the techniques is to shake your body, to move your body in
Mm.
order to surrender. And surrender means somehow bringing yourself into the current of life, bringing yourself back into this process of continuous change, which is what it is to be human. We're always changing and growing and learning, and new things are happening if we're fully alive. When we're depressed, that process slows down or shuts down. So in order to renew that process, we need to put out some effort. And the effort will help us surrender to that lively, lifelong process of change. And in order to do that surrender, which is really saying, okay, I'm going to take part in life. I'm going to accept what's coming. I'm going to move with it. I'm going to learn from it. Some people are able just to do that. There's a guy whom I write about in that chapter called Milton, who is an airplane mechanic and former Army Master Sergeant, pretty rigid guy, very angry, very depressed, very angry at his ex-wife and angry at his kid. They moved away and he just can't deal with it. And he's feeling worse and worse. And one of the doctors whose plane he was servicing as a mechanic referred him to me. And I saw him and I said, I think what you should do is that you should read this book called The Tao Te Ching,
Mm. It's
and
beautiful.
by Lao Tzu,
Yes.
Great Chinese classic. It's a book about how life is always changing and how you need to surrender to the change, to the way. That's what the Taoists understood. The
Yes.
Chinese, the Chinese sort of practical and spiritual, natural perspective was learn to surrender to change. So he read the book. He spent a whole weekend. He's very conscientious. He spent a whole weekend reading the book, looking at all. He read it in the translation. I suggested Stephen Mitchell. Stephen's a friend. His translation's great. But then Milton said, I spent all day. He came back to me a few days later. He spent all day reading this translation, and it was great. And at first it didn't make sense, and then it started to make sense. And then I got interested, and I wanted to read other translations. Well, the bottom line is he spent a 3-day weekend reading half a dozen different translations,
My
walking
goodness.
around, reading, sitting on park benches. When he called up his wife and kid on Sunday, after the end of the weekend, as he always would call up on Sunday. Usually he was angry as hell, but this time he spoke. His ex-wife answered the phone. He told me, and he said, "Hey, baby, how you doing?" And she said, "What have you been smoking?" Couldn't believe it. He'd been so angry and depressed. And he said he had a very nice conversation with her. And then he talked with his 11-year-old son. And he said, instead of belittling my boy and making him feel small, I was just asking him, how's baseball going? And are you having any difficulties? And any way I can help you? He said it was totally different kind of conversation. He said, so Doc, this is on his second visit. He said, so Doc, I'm really happy I met you, and you've helped me change my life around. But between you and Lao Tzu and me, I don't think I need to see you anymore. So he was able to surrender.
Wow.
Most of us are not like that. Most
Yes.
of us have to do something very active physically to get out of this mindset in which everything looks gloomy and doomy and negative, to get out of this body when we're depressed. I don't know if you noticed it. I certainly did. My body's kind of shut down. I don't feel like
Yes.
moving. I'm kind of
Yes.
tight. Often,
Yes.
if you look at depressed people, or when you're depressed, they sort of like this, heads down,
Exactly.
shoulders slumped. So you need
Exactly.
to do something very active to get out of that. And in that chapter, I recommend some what are called expressive meditations. And
Hmm.
one of the easiest is shaking your body, just getting up, standing up, your knees bent, and shaking your body from the feet up through the knees, hips, shoulders, and head for 5 or 10 minutes,
Hmm.
then standing for a couple of minutes, and then letting your body move to some music. And again, people can read it in Unstuck. They can look on our website and see people shaking and dancing and see my instructions for doing this expressive meditation. This these expressive meditations, and shaking and dancing is only one of hundreds. These are the oldest forms of meditation on the planet.
Absolutely.
And they're beautiful. These are the ones that
Yes.
allow us to free ourselves from these
Yes.
constrictions and help us surrender to life again. So I recommend that people who are depressed do one or another of those every day. And yes, it will feel like a total pain in the butt, and I can't do this, and it's too much. Fine, say thank you for sharing and get up and do it. And do as much as you can. If you can't do 5 or 10 minutes at first, start with a minute or two. Just get started moving your body. And what I've seen working, literally training and doing workshops for tens of thousands of people all over the world, and the people we've trained at the Center for Mind Body Medicine have in turn worked with many hundreds of thousands, is that this kind of expressive meditation is often the beginning of healing for people who are depressed, really anxious, people who've been traumatized, people with chronic illness. And it seems a little strange. It's not part of conventional medicine or conventional psychotherapy. And yet, this is what our ancestors knew.
Hmm.
They knew how crucial this was for all of us. And just do it. Not a
Hmm.
question of your viewers taking my word. Just check out how to do it again and Unstuck or on the website, and do it. It's, you decide for yourself. See the difference it makes. When we do it, we were just down, we were talking before we got on the air about work we're doing in Broward County, Florida,
Hmm.
with the community that survived the school shootings down there.
Yes.
And people are very traumatized, many of them quite depressed after the shootings. And yet, so many of them felt revived as they would do these expressive meditations, not just once, twice, three, four, half a dozen times. Sometimes even the first time, they say, "Oh my God, I'm starting to feel a little bit alive." So that's the key to surrender. In order to surrender, in order to let go and be part of life, we need to begin usually by putting out some real active effort.
It's so true. I think of it also as acceptance. It's when something terrible has happened to you, just accepting that that's just, to your point, the way of life. That's just how life flows. So when I was going through the horrific health crisis second time, I had to get to the point of accepting what was happening to me and saying, okay, there is something in this that I'm supposed to grow from, learn from, and I'm just going to accept what's happening to me. I'm not going to fight it anymore. I'm not going to swim. I'm going to float through it. And I think that's what you're calling surrender, is in my visualization that I would do was that I'm just floating.
Beautiful. And that's exactly right. Acceptance is another word for surrender.
And so if something terrible has happened where there's been a shooting and God forbid you've lost a child, the second part of it is, to your point, is to say, because we start asking questions, why me? Why this horrible tragedy? There is no God. How could a God exist? How could horrible things happen to beautiful innocent souls? And what I've realized, you can't go there because there's no answer to that. So
But
that.
yeah, but people have to do that. It's
Mhm.
that we have to go through a certain period. Most of us, can't accept it. Why is this happening? Why me? All this thing. This actually comes. This moves into the next chapter, which is really dealing with the demons.
The other thing that I've noticed is I interviewed Dr. Jeffrey Thompson last week, and we were talking about sound healing and sound vibration. And I'm connecting the dots, and tell me if I'm wrong. I think to some extent, when you put on music and you move, you're probably recalibrating the vibration. You're probably rejiggering your brain waves. Where has there been any research done into where do our brain waves sit when we're depressed, and the fact that sound and movement starts to maybe elevate those? Any
I
science
don't
on that?
I don't know if there's been research on. I don't know the research specifically done on changes in brain waves. There certainly has been research done showing that, you know, deep breathing and music helps people with depression. And there's certainly research doing that movement is extremely useful for depression. There's a whole bunch of studies that have been done, again, comparing movement, active exercise, with a variety of antidepressants, showing that exercise does just as well or better than antidepressants without the negative side effects. There has not been research done that I know of on these expressive meditations.
Okay.
We use them as part of the comprehensive program in Unstuck, in what we train people to do at the Center for Mind Body Medicine. And we have research showing the effect of our comprehensive program, which it very much includes these techniques, on depression, on anxiety, on post-traumatic stress disorder. So
Beautiful.
I think, yeah, I would say the specific research hasn't been done, but there's been enough done that it is, as the scientists would say, suggestive, so that you've
Hmm.
got everything to gain and nothing to lose by doing
Absolutely.
it. Fortunately, more and more research is being done on the kinds of approaches that we're discussing now. For
Yes.
example, on the effect of exercise on depression, the effect of meditation on decreasing uh, the size of areas of the brain that are responsible for fear and anger, for example, the amygdala and the emotional brain, and increasing activity in the frontal cortex, areas of the brain responsible for judgment and self-awareness and compassion. So the researchers are getting more and more interested in the kinds of approaches we're talking about, and that research is beginning to appear. And the research on our model, which is the one I'm teaching in Unstuck, the research is quite good on the use of our model to treat people who have been traumatized, who are also depressed.
Okay.
So I'm, you know, don't worship the research, but look at it critically, and I think it will encourage many people. And then also keep looking at your own experience. What is making a difference for you?